that I've learned learned from my previous career in the Secret Service. And I just want to make sure before I begin, Angela, you're still seeing the screen now?
Yes, I sure am. I can see your PowerPoint, Mike. You're good to go.
All right, perfect. So the idea, everybody here, is to just really create some awareness and kind of a quick way, and then I want to, get through the presentation portion. So I'm happy to talk, answer any questions, discuss anything that's on anybody's mind, especially with some of the rapidly moving tragic events that are occurring lately. And then certainly, as Angela said, happy to, jump on some subsequent calls with anybody to help kind of guide you and mentor you and see where you're at and how we could be of help to you. So really, this whole presentation is centered around voices that protect, and what that is we basically endorse and are very big advocates of ensuring that we embrace the voices of our whole community, not just students, but staff, teachers, administration, parents, because we can learn so much right from the people within our own communities when it comes to risk assessment and security assessments in general. The people that are there all day, every day, see things, hear things, know things that become very important in how we keep ourselves safe and secure so that we can focus on educating people. And so the most important pieces of information to come out of this, specifically with encouraging those that have information to come forward, is so that you can ultimately identify potential concerning scenarios, situations, behaviors that may be indicative of bigger problems, potential students who are on pathways to violence. But then we need to assess that information. Assessing is kind of becomes more of a systematic and not scientific per se, but it definitely becomes there's more to it than just a gut feel and things like that. And so it's really important to be able to assess these concerns. But in order to assess, you have to be able to investigate and you have to have information. And so again, it's about being able to take all that information in and then being able to manage it as well. And a lot of this is encouraged just through open and honest communication with everybody. And the emphasis with getting people comfortable to come forward with information is an emphasis on prevention, not not trying to get people in trouble, not looking to, we're trying to call the police or something like that. It's truly to start to get to assess, do we have some things to be concerned about? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. And part of that is through education and knowledge, and information is knowledge and knowledge is power. So it's about engaging the community and then ultimately intervening on issues if they come up. I like to share this example analogy from the Secret Service. This obviously, if you haven't been to Washington, D.C., this is an overhead view of the White House grounds. It shows most of the White House complex. It's not all on the screen. But this is a very good analogy, and it's fitting to talk about it in Secret Service terms because the Secret Service was actually a part of, after the Columbine shootings in the late 90s, got together with the Department of Education and started to impart some of its knowledge on threat assessment and protective intelligence and things like that, and how to bring it to the school setting in order to keep kids safe. And that's only gotten bigger and more robust over the years through one of the subdivisions of the Secret Service called the National Threat Assessment Center. So I like to kind of keep the analogies the same here. The whole idea when it comes to anything with security or safety is to have layers of defense. And the reason being is the sooner we can identify and assess, and you'll hear those terms repeatedly, the sooner we can identify and assess a threat, the more time and options we have to manage that threat. If we leave these things till the last moment, then we're relying on chance, or we're now managing chaos and crisis, and we didn't have time to prepare and hopefully prevent things. And I'll go into that a little bit more here in a second. The easiest way to think about this is what I've circled right there on the slide. That's the Oval Office in the West Wing. If those of us responsible for safety and security only worried about that most inner perimeter of what we're trying to protect, maybe it's the people, maybe it's the classrooms itself. We're leaving a lot of other things to chance, and all these other tools and safety and security controls, administrative controls that we can use to prevent bad things. But taking all this a step further, we can add those layers in the schools. We can go to the perimeters, we can go to the parking lots and things like that. And ultimately, that's what you see here. And this is what the Secret Service does. It has layers and layers of security. Lots of it is technical and physical controls, but one of the most important layers that the Secret Service has and has relied on for decades and decades is its protective intelligence layer. And that's that perimeter outside the grounds of what you see here. It's that information, that knowledge, that awareness that comes in from people that are making threats against the president or the people that the Secret Service protects. This is the same concept that has been brought forth to protect schools, and it's that ability to tap into the community and get information coming in, being able to centrally collect that information so that you can identify, assess, and manage potential threats. The big thing from a security lesson standpoint here is there's no such thing as perfect security anywhere, anytime. And specifically, the Secret Service can attest to that from a year ago when they broke down and had an assassination attempt on a president. These things happen, so there's never a perfect plan. Security is a journey. It's not a race. That once you embark on a pathway and a plan to improve, it's all about understanding, more importantly, your own environment, not somebody else's environment necessarily, what somebody else is doing. You have to understand what's going on in your own environment. That's part of the emphasis of tapping into those voices within your community that can help guide that ongoing journey in the security assessments. Uh, you'll see in the bottom of the screen the incident is the bad thing we don't want to happen. It could be a violent incident like we've seen in some of the news lately. It could be something like a sexual harassment incident, a cyberbullying, a bullying, you name it, physical assault, whatever. Could be a theft incident. Could be a reputational incident against the schools. That is a bad thing we want to protect overall in a school, not just violence. We use the acronym CHIRP, which stands for Cyber, Human, Information, Reputation, and Physical Assets. So if you see that, that's what that refers to. We believe in trying to create a safe culture and protecting all of this. Ultimately, we want to prevent and prepare and keeping things from happening. So we want to be left of that boom or left of that potential incident. We commonly refer to it as the boom, the thing we want to avoid. So there's a lot of things we can do to prevent, prepare, and hopefully keep it from happening. But because there's no perfect security, there is always the chance that we end up in that incident. And that's part of why, as part of a good security plan, you want to plan for what's right of boom and all these other things that happen post-incident. And we're not going to go into those as much today, but that's effectively the portions of managing the crisis, understanding after incidents happen to recover from them, and then feed those back in to your preparedness and your prevention as part of that ongoing journey in safety and security. But there is another pathway here potentially in schools if done right and managed aggressively. And that is, in fact, adopting this concept of getting your community to report things and managing that information and bringing it into a centralized container that somebody is paying attention to, that somebody can assess all these things. Could be all kinds of different threats. We may not be talking about violence here again, but if you don't take in those reports, whether it's from a reporting platform or it's whether somebody's coming and talking to the principal or the head of school or a teacher or a nurse or a counselor, that information has to get somewhere so more people can see what's going on, because everybody's in a perfectly working protective intelligence or behavioral threat assessment program is somebody else may see one little nugget, and we'll go over that here coming up, and somebody else might see another nugget. And if nobody's connecting those pieces of the puzzle, that's how things get missed. IAM stands for identify, assess, and manage. Again, you'll hear me say it at least, I think I've gone at least 3 times now, but that's ultimately what we have to do. We have to be able to identify, assess, and manage potential threats. If we do that, we do run a higher probability of stepping off that pathway to a boom or to an incident. We can get that back in to our improvement process and figure out how to prevent things, how to intervene, how to get somebody help that may be on a pathway to violence. And that's the whole important piece here, so that we can avoid that bad day or that tragic day that some have. Our natural reaction, of course, when things happen, I hate to use the enunciation example, but it's very raw for all of us in the state of Minnesota, is we have a natural reaction to want to build more and more barriers, and that's fine. More controls, other things. that may fall at different points on that spectrum. Example, bigger, better fences, more cameras, bulletproof glass, bullet resistant glass, glass glazing, more reinforced doors, locks, more locks, better locks, security. Maybe we feel we need security in the school. Do we really? Is that what we really need in our school? Maybe, but ultimately the problem is when it comes to targeted violence specifically, the reality is in a lot of studied shootings and school averted attacks by the Secret Service, National Threat Assessment, and other agencies, is the school shooter is often already seated in the classroom or has been in the classroom. And that's backed up by data and statistics out there. And that's why encouraging people to come forward with information and getting that voices that protect concept is so important in terms of creating a behavioral threat assessment program. To go over some of these stats real quick, and I'm going to fly through this, and I apologize, but this is going to be made available by the collaborative to all of you, so you can certainly have it and go back through it afterwards. So I want to just get through the content so you can ask questions. So the Secret Service has studied these attacks for decades and decades, back to Columbine. They specifically focused as part of their early studies targeted acts of violence, and in those cases, 100% of the attacks in the schools were done by current or former students. The General Accounting Office of the U.S. government has done some wider studies over a very broad 20-year period of time and identified that 49% of shooters, and we're talking about just violent acts now, we're not talking about cyberbullying and things like that. 49% of the shooters were current or former students. 32% were parents, relatives, staff, or other categories associated with the school. So that's roughly, I didn't do that great math, but we're talking about 81% of the school community. Potentially, there was a connection to the school community itself, to the person who was responsible for committing some of these acts of violence. 19% had no relation. That stat you're going to get from, say, an inner city school near a drug zone, things like that, where you have random acts of violence that occur on and around the campus or spill onto it, maybe an athletic event, things like that. Deep diving a little deeper into the Secret Service studies from the National Threat Assessment. Bottom line, threat assessment has been proven to be the best practice for preventing targeted school violence. We argue that it's also the best practice for preventing all kinds of other issues, that CHIRP concept, cyber issues, bullying, online sexting, these types of things that do affect all schools these days. But specifically, again, focusing on the violent aspect of this report, which was targeted school violence, 100% of the attackers that they studied of both successful attacks and averted attacks, 100% displayed concerning behaviors prior to the attack. 94% of those displayed the concerning behaviors at school, meaning somebody at school was in a position to see something. 49% of those posted online, did something out there in the public that other members of the public would have been able to see. The National Threat Assessment Center emphasizes this concept of leakage of intent is one of the strongest opportunities for prevention, meaning this information gets out there, people know something, we have to be able to report it and get it out there for somebody that can help manage that. Moreover, reporting does in fact prevent violence. Based on these studies, 75% of the averted attacks, meaning they were prevented before they actually happened or before somebody was killed, were discovered because someone did in fact report some sort of concerning communication or behavior. Peers or classmates are typically the first to know and are critical in being able to speak up directly to prevent these attacks. Moreover, again, General Accounting Office did some studies, and the inside the school shootings are overwhelmingly perpetrated by students or former students, meaning the school community is uniquely positioned to notice and report red flags. All these different little things, when you start adding them all up in what's called a protective intelligence questionnaire or a threat assessment system or process of managing it, can be detected early enough to try to get somebody help get them off that pathway to violence, or if need be, to get them introduced to the law enforcement, criminal justice system if need be. I'm going to touch on this at the high level here, and you can certainly read it afterwards. The red flags that were missed in the Nicholas Cruz, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting down in Florida in 2018 were direct threats were made by Cruz. There was targeted violence at home. He was engaged in animal cruelty significantly. He had weapons access. He had obsession with violence. He had escalating aggression, which was noticed by a lot of different people. There were some people trying to report things that were missed. Somebody wasn't managing it, didn't connect dots because of they didn't have all of the information at their fingertips. And there was lots of online leakage. There was social media posts and things pertaining to weapons, violent ideation, things like that, that could have been known. Who knew about Nicholas Cruz? These are examples of people that collectively had a piece of that puzzle, and had somebody been able to see all of those pieces of the puzzle, they might have been able to put it together in time to prevent a tragic shooting. Fellow students, teachers, administrators, counselors, employees, neighbors, friends, social media followers, law enforcement, and even his own mother. Tragically, we saw in the Annunciation shooting here recently that the mother possibly had information, maybe didn't know who to go to, was afraid to go to somebody, didn't want to see her son get arrested by the police. We don't know. We don't know yet. But she knew something about his life. And if somebody had been monitoring all that over the years, there might have been a different ending. This is a quick, going to get into just some very quick high level look at snapshots of some of the similarities between these various school shootings. This was the one a year ago in Madison at Abundant Life. Some information that came in from some students that were interviewed after the fact was the shooting was over almost as fast as it began. Meaning we can put all these controls, we can put security guards in place, we can have gun threat detection things, but a lot of times these things happen so fast. All it takes is a student standing up in the classroom, and people are going to get hurt or they're going to die. So we have to extend that perimeter out further and further. We have to take in that information from people that are in the know and encourage people to bring that information forward. Students thought the alert that went out was a lockdown drill. Samantha had other personal issues going on in her life. She was a recent transfer into the school. Her parents were recently divorced. So some other things going on in her life that were triggering based on her mental health situation at the time. She wore symbolic clothing that a lot of school shooters are out there doing, other and displayed other symbolism. KMFDM, we'll show it to you here in a second. A rock band that was followed by the Columbine shooters back in the late 90s. Samantha had obsession with school mass shooters. She put out concerning posts about her willingness to kill herself and following the life stressors, things that other people independently after the fact, and this happens all the time from all these studied shootings. Well, I didn't really think they were going to do it. I didn't think they were going to do it because they had one nugget of information. They didn't have the total picture of what more and more people might have had they communicated it and spoke up and reported that information in some form or fashion. Quick visual examples. This is her wearing a KMFDM shirt. Dylan Klebold is pictured side by side with her from back in the 1999 shooting in Columbine, him wearing the same shirt. She's out on a shooting range showing she's got access to weapons. Are any of these all by themselves indicative of that somebody's going to be a school shooter? No, absolutely not. But when you add all this up along with life stressors, this becomes very, very concerning. And that's when we want to step off that pathway to violence. We don't want to get to boom, obviously. She had her own Cash App, pictures of Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris on her Cash App. Things that if somebody had just done an assessment, looked at it, gotten tipped off to her, and started looking at these things were immediate red flags. Kids wearing KMFDM shirts these days, that's an immediate red flag, even without knowing other stressors, idolization of other school shooters. We don't want this to happen. This is the Annunciation Catholic School website just a couple weeks ago when I took the snapshot. We don't want our website for our school to be a learning environment and a Christ-centered learning environment to be a memorial to our students. This was Robert Westman's, some of the same things similar to Samantha. Again, I'm going to go through it at a very fast pace here. Reference to KMFDM on his post. Rupnow was Samantha Rupnow, the Abundant Life shooter. He had on his rifle killed Donald Trump. That alone, if somebody would have reported it, would have warranted a visit by the Secret Service that would have looked into him for threats against the president and maybe would have uncovered this potential shooting before it happened. But again, we need to encourage people to come forward with their voices. More symbolism. This is Robert Cremo, who was involved in the Highland Park shooting in Illinois back in 2022. Reference to his symbolism on his shirts. Robin Westman had the same symbols on his magazines for the children. Very red flag as somebody from the world I live in to see something like that. It's an immediate red flag to law enforcement and that kind of thing. Additional names all by himself maybe don't mean anything to certain people. All those names on the left, you can read it later, are all names referenced to mass shooters on the right. You can read some of that information. And again, a reference to the Norway Breivik attack in Norway a long time ago. So the Secret Service, as I mentioned, did a lot of studies over the years. They continue to put out great stuff, not only on school shootings, but mass attacks in public spaces. It all tracks the same way. Most people, whether it's in a school or whether it's an organization, are on this pathway to violence. We need to pull them off and encourage people to come forward with reporting. So it's a great report that's out there. One of the things, though, that they did, which was very helpful a couple years ago, is they actually created this report on why reporting itself is so important and what are some of the barriers, what are some of the positives that come out there, and how do you build that program into your school and environment. But some of the common barriers that people have provided why they don't report is they fear retaliation. So we may think that well, our only option for reporting is you need to go speak to a counselor or you need to go speak to the head of school or the principal. That's great, and we should encourage that open and honest communication. The problem is we're dealing with a younger generation that is afraid to come forward, doesn't want to be called a snitch, doesn't want to be isolated, is afraid to come forward with that information, whatever that case may be. So we have to also create multiple channels, multiple pathways for reporting. Encourage in person, encourage to a teacher, encourage to a trusted adult in the school, but also provide an anonymous, capable way for people to come forward with information and encourage them to use it. And then manage that properly, because the other barriers to reporting are the perception of futility, that nothing gets done, nobody does anything about this, or they're not. I don't mind saying this. My wife works in a public school system, and prior to the last 2 months, the school reporting links were buried 5, 6 web pages deep. You couldn't easily get to them, so people didn't know where to go and report this. So lack of awareness is a big one, and then there could be cultural barriers as well. Real quick, key strategies that have been studied to strengthen reporting is, again, building that safe culture, that community, by encouraging people to come forward, letting those that do want to be known, that aren't reporting anonymously, that you did get their report, that you're following up on it, and that you appreciate it, things like that. And again, I'm not going to read through the 1 through 5 because you'll get this and you can read through it, but these are things we're happy to discuss in detail after the fact. We have been asked at nauseum recently by both current clients as well as people that are talking to us about this concept. Well, what do we report? What kinds of things? Why would I want to report certain, school behaviors, or somebody's, getting into trouble in the classroom? Because those are one piece of the puzzle. You may not know what that other piece of the puzzle may be. It may be somebody else is reporting that this is my friend outside of school and I'm worried about them. They're talking about suicide and they're, or whatever the case may be. So we want to encourage the reporting of all concerning incidents, concerning behavior, and let people know these are all taken seriously. You may not be able to go far in your assessment or investigation of any one particular incident, but when you track all that information over time, believe me, the picture starts to become very clear, just like a puzzle coming together. And so those are examples you can read after the fact as well. I would argue, I have been a big fan of, if you see something, say something. I worked for the government. I worked for the Department of Homeland Security when they brought this up after 9/11 attacks. But I no longer, after the last several weeks, feel that is enough. I don't think just saying if you see something, say something is enough. And the reason is it subconsciously, in my opinion, especially having been in law enforcement, implies an evidentiary standard that is needed. So it's a barrier to reporting for people to think, well, I didn't see it, but my friend told me about it, so I'm not going to say anything. I don't know for sure. No, the standard needs to be, in my opinion, now, if you hear, know, see, are told, sense something, the hair on the back of your neck goes up, you suspect something, you report it. You encourage other people to come forward with that information. We are not trying to make criminal cases on people that are on pathways to violence. Forget all the other incidents that could cause risk to your school. We want to pull people off that pathway to violence. We don't need to worry about hearsay. We don't need to worry about evidentiary standards. We need to have the information in order to properly assess and investigate and manage potential threats, to get people the intervention that they need to pull them off that pathway. Every voice does matter. That needs to be encouraged. And when it comes to encouraging voices that protect and get people reporting, that information does need to be managed. It has to be looked at. It has to be assessed. And that's an important key. Not going to go into this, but school violence, shootings, to give people a little bit more peace of mind. Statistically, despite the media coverage and things like that, it's still probably like getting struck by lightning at any particular school. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do a behavioral threat assessment program and encouraging people to come forward, because guess what? There's all these other threats that occur in our school. And we're seeing so much of this lately. We just had a recent one. I live in Woodbury, and there was, I'm not exposing anybody, this was in the public Pioneer Press. A school down the street had a teacher that was arrested in southern Minnesota for sexual exploitation, was a teacher in a school here in Woodbury. No connection made, luckily. Obviously, no longer a teacher in the school, but these other things happen. And so encouraging that voice, voices to come forward and report, potentially reduces your risk, and more importantly, that damage that could occur to a young mind out there, from other types of incidents, bullying, or you name it. I'm not going to go into this at nauseum, because again, you can read it. We're happy to talk to anybody that's interested afterwards. But building a behavioral threat assessment program, and building that voices that protect concept, there's more that goes with it. And this is just kind of a roadmap to some of that needs to be encouraged as part of that process, so that you can do it right. But it follows the same concepts I've told, where you want to build information back into that continuous review cycle of what you get, conduct proper risk assessments, and make determinations as to when you do in fact go to law enforcement and when you don't, because a lot of times most of that can be managed from the school itself. The number one way to keep your children, staff protected is through intelligence gathering. It's through information, getting that information. Real prevention begins with the voices that in fact can protect us, that left the boom. This overall is a program out there in the whole industry called behavioral threat assessment management. And it involves, again, multiple channels of reporting, but then being able to identify that information coming in, assessing, investigating, and then managing those potential threats. They may not be threats that we can take to law enforcement, but we have to stay on top of them. I would argue in the Christian community itself, that if there had been a good close collaboration on behavioral threat assessment in the Robin Westman case at Annunciation recently, the things I've heard now after the incident, my neighbor across the street was a fellow student at St. Thomas Academy. Robin went to St. Agnes as well. There were reports of incidents all over the place. All those pieces of the puzzle, like the Nicholas Cruz case. In some cases, law enforcement was contacted, but some of the reports that have come out on that was that law enforcement was sent down to his home in Mendota Heights, and all they were told to do was do a welfare check. They did a welfare check. They couldn't determine anything. We don't know what happened, because that information disappeared into the law enforcement world. And I'm not picking on law enforcement. I'm happy to have that discussion, having been in it for almost 30 years, as to why you still have to manage your own intelligence, your own threat information about what goes on in your environment, because a majority of that information you get is things that you can manage to intervene as a school and as an education leader. And that's really important. So with that, I'll pause. There's my information, Jason's information. Again, as Angela said, we're happy to follow up with anybody and have further conversations about this. You'll get the slide deck. And with that, I'll leave that up unless Angela wants to take it down, but I'm happy to answer any questions from anybody about anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Mike. Any questions, you guys?
What do you say are some kind of low-hanging fruit from, maybe some common things that you see could easily be done at schools, that maybe it's pretty common for them not to be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a nutshell, this is a very, it's even difficult for me to think about, and I lived this career, and I lived with threats and investigating threats. We have to remember, in most of these tragic shootings, which everybody gets uber focused on, which is totally fine and understandable, is there is a direct connection to the school itself, or it's a current student, or it's a former student. And so we don't want to get caught up in all this shiny object stuff of all these other things we could do. Bulletproof glass. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do. I I treated myself to a nice retirement car when I retired from the Secret Service. And I bought the factory showroom car. It had all these extra bells and whistles on it. I didn't need it. I could drive the car with all that stuff. It was great. So it's the same concept as what do you need for your environment to be able to get, from point A to point B in a car? What is your environment telling you? So again, the whole concept of voices to protect is the number one thing in any conversations we have with any clients is you have to engage on this first. You have to rely on your community to participate in safety and security day. I'll give you some additional examples. Was that Tim that asked that question?
Yes.
Tim, recently, I'm not going to name, clients, schools. Uh, we're having discussions helping talk about putting more things on, like better cameras or the bulletproof glazing. The problem is if we're leaving doors unlocked, very simply in our schools, we are opening ourselves up to that external threat. So those that are worried that maybe somebody still comes in from the outside, because we've seen some of that in some of these cases, we put all this other fancy technology in place, or security controls, but yet we have people that aren't being trained and aren't being educated, or we're not holding staff and students accountable to locking the door behind them, shutting the door, making sure it's not propped open. They go outside for a photography class and take pictures and then leave a rock in the door and propped open. We're leaving ourselves vulnerable. So some of these very simple things that don't cost anything are being missed. Cameras. My humble personal opinion, don't if your fear is not that you may have somebody vandalize the outside of the school or the inside of the school or break into the candy machine or whatever, don't invest large amounts of money in camera technology if you're not actively monitoring it or have somebody to actively monitor it. Put your time, your budget, and your resources into this human-centered approach of reconnecting with students and staff and getting people to come forward with information and managing that information. That's just a couple quick examples. And again, like my silly analogy of a car, it's great if you've got the budget and the ability to have all those bells and whistles on. By all means, put the bells and whistles on. It goes to that layered concept that I talked about at the White House. If you can do it and you can afford it, great. But don't do things that you can't manage either, because you create a false expectation in your community and your parents and your staff around safety and security if things aren't actually being done. And we end up letting our guard down on that most important human-centered approach. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Angela.
Any other questions or things that are bubbling up for you guys?
I just wanted to add, there is no stupid question. There is no bad question when it comes to safety and security. I give a lot of different talks on a lot of different subjects, and that's one of the things I usually start off by saying. So after the fact, don't hesitate to reach out if you have a question or need some additional guidance.
Great. Very helpful.
Mm.
I gotta drink this in a little bit. Oh, I was gonna ask you, your slideshow, your presentation, is that?
We will send that to you guys in an email tomorrow.
Great.
So you guys can have access to that, and we'll send the recording of today's session too if there's anyone else in your building that you feel like you'd like to watch it, for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, so with that, if you didn't register ahead of time, if you can just pop your email address in the chat, and then we'll make sure to get you those resources tomorrow as well.
If you did register, we have your information already. But if you did not register ahead of time, yeah, we'd love your email so we can get you that info.
Great.
I'm also going to include you guys a CEU form for you. Thank you so much for joining us today. It'll be a half of a CEU credit for you for your time and your commitment and your engagement. And thank you so much to Mike and 360. And when they mean that you can reach out, they really mean that. I actually even just got Mike in touch with my dad, who's a deacon at our church, and they're going to hopefully be helping us on the church side. And so they are an awesome organization. And so we're grateful to bring that forward. And please take Mike up on his offer to hop on a 1 hour Zoom to dive into some things that are personalized for you and your school. So it was wonderful to see you all today, and we're grateful that you took time out of your day to be with us.
Yeah, thanks for being a great liaison. That's super helpful.
Good.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for your service. Hats off to you. Thank you for taking your experience and helping us out who need it.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, we just want to close since we know this is a pertinent topic and also just a heavy topic. I just want to close and pray over each of you and your schools represented, and then we'll let you go back to your school day. So let me just pray over everyone. Dear God, we just thank you for Mike and Lord, just the knowledge, the wealth of knowledge that he shared with us today, Father. And we just lift him up and his team and the work that they do in helping us in our schools. And Father, we just pray over each school that's represented on this call, Father. We ask that you would continue to give them wisdom as they navigate all the complexities that they're facing. And Lord, we just thank you for the mission they're on for Christian education and just pray that you will bless them and give them just wisdom to know the next steps to take after being a part of this call, Father. In your name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, good to see you.
Everyone.
See you. Thanks, Mike.
Take care. You're welcome. Have a great week.